Well, it was a very collaborative piece. It was actually starting right from the beginning. Mark Duplass called me and said, we had made a film together called Hump Day and had a great time doing it, and the film did great things for us both. And we both kind of had the idea that it would be nice to to collaborate again. And he called me and said, I have this. He's half of the Duplass brothers, so he also makes movies. And in the vault of potential movies for the Duplass brothers was this idea that they had, but because of the core of it, there was a guy who had lost his brother. They just felt like it might be a little too close to home for the two of them to direct. So he still thought it was a great idea and might be a good launching point for a film. So called and said, what if I'm in it? What if you direct it? What do you think of this idea? When he pitched it to me, it had no sisters. It was really funny. It started out as a guy and a girl are best friends. The guy's in a bad place because he's lost his brother recently. She sends him up to the family getaway to really try and figure out his life. And he thinks he's going to be alone, and there he meets her hot young mother. And it just seemed extra male to me.
It really does.
Right, doesn't it? It's just like something a little, ooh, really? Oh, okay. And I think it actually would have been a really interesting film, but the first thing I did was change the mom to a sister.
Oh, yeah.
I liked the idea of there being two parallel sibling relationships, because that fourth character, I feel like, is Tom, the dead brother. He's a part of the landscape. And it's like these four, lives and how they just end up entangling in really unusual ways. And the other thing I did was set it in the Northwest, which is where I live. I live in Seattle, so I wanted it set up there. But everything that came after that, the way the movie plays out was all after the fact. I have really boring relationships with my siblings, but I've noticed, I've observed, been a close observer of really fascinating, especially sister relationships where there's this great bond, but then there's also all these points of friction, and nobody can push your buttons like your sister, and nobody wants to because they can, and there's just all kinds of stuff that can happen. Yeah, that's the kind of territory I really love, are those complicated interpersonal dynamics. Yeah. I didn't audition people. It's all about instinct for me. I invite people I have based on their past work and a feeling that I have about them and whether they'll be able to. There's a lot of improvisation. Neither of those actresses had improvised very much in the past, and so it was really an instinctive thing. Can they do it? Would they be a good match? But the thing that's interesting too is that Rose came in really late. She was a last-minute addition, literally 3 days before we started shooting.
Wow.
And I had been developing this all of the backstory with these guys and the actors, the original set of actors, for 8-9 months. And so it was but luckily we had this sort of Bible of this backstory Bible, and what was the history of these characters, who were these people. But still, I wanted her to put her own stamp on it, and she just did. She was able to really bring her own zhuzh, as she says, to the role. And the other lucky thing was that we were all living together. So we were bunking just in houses just a stone's throw away from the picture house. And I sort of kidnapped my cast and crew, and we were all eating together, and the two actresses had their own little private place. But they were there together. It wasn't like hotel rooms where they were separate. They actually were there together. They didn't have to sleep in the same bed, but they got to hang out late into the night, for the couple days before we started shooting. I mean, they should teach a class on how to create instant sister chemistry. But the thing was that they're both amazing actresses, and they also came to this project with just the most open hearts, and just and so because you really have to be willing to create, in order to create a sense of intimacy, you really need to be vulnerable with each other. And I think they just stayed up late and told real stories from their real lives and just really found the way to connect. I mean, the schedule is no different. It's just however you're going to actually tackle each scene. You have to have a schedule. I have an assistant director. I mean, it's all the way you normally shoot a movie in that regard. But once you're on set, it's a little different. We talk instead of rehearsing while they're tweaking the lights. We're talking. We're huddled, somewhere. We're having a huddle, and we're talking about, okay, so we're all on the same page. Like, this is where we're at in the movie, and this is what has happened between. This is the context. This is what's happened just before the scene, and this is the long history. We already have the foundation of what's gone on before and what can be drawn on in that way and referenced or even just felt. And then we've got 2 cameras, and so we decide how we want to cover the first. If it's 3 people, what are each camera going to do this time out, and we just go for it. And they turn the cameras on, and they just find their way through the scene. and I'm clocking as a former editor, you know, as an editor, my editor brain is like saying, okay, that's going to be, that moment worked well, this one's not working so well, we have to try it again in, you know, a different way for the next take, you know, and then, okay, this works pretty well. So by the end, by take 3 or 4 or 5, I'm like, you know, whenever it is, my brain is like, okay, I have it all. It's all in there somewhere between all the takes, and I'll be able to find it in the edit room.